Welcome into No Boundaries here on Sky Sport, a Cricket World Cup special. Of course, we're talking the World Cup final in Ahmedabad. Australia have done it, their sixth World Cup title, beating India in front of a sea of blue, 100,000 fans. Who would have thought, given the run India were on heading into that final? A wonderful game of cricket. Here to talk it all over with me, Colin Munro in studio, Mike Hesson down in Dunedin, the greatest city on earth. Hess, I'll start with you. An amazing way to finish what has been an incredible tournament, and as I said, India in imperious form, but Australia, you could never write them off, and it was a classic Australian performance.
Yeah, I guess in a final all you want to do is play some good cricket, and that was as close as you get to a flawless performance from Australia. I thought with the ball they adapted to conditions so quickly. They were exceptional in terms of how they operated with the ball and in the field, and although they had a little hiccup at the start with the bat, it was a pretty clinical chase.
Yeah, I think obviously Travis Head was the man of the match, but close behind was Cummins. The way that he just led the team, he obviously went against the Aussie tradition of batting first in a final, putting scoreboard pressure on, and yeah, he was exceptional. The way that he marshalled his troops, bowled one over spells. You don't really see that in one-day cricket, do you? So yeah, I thought he was exceptional, and yeah, the Aussies, I didn't see that coming, but fair play. They played pretty much a complete game, like Hess said.
Travis Head was superb. We will talk more about him later in the program. Hess, we'll start with the first innings, and I suppose the decision for Pat Cummins once he won the toss to bowl first. A lot of the pundits in India were saying they would have batted first. When you looked at the pitch, what were your initial thoughts on Pat's decision to field first?
Look, it was dry, wasn't it? Probably much drier than everybody expected, and the Australians were even talking overnight about potentially having to face Ravichandran and Ashwin, and they were thinking about even changing their side to some degree. So there was obviously some concerns, but what they decided is that obviously chasing that ground is not a bad option. The ability to, with the dew, they would have trained the night before, and I understand from about 6:30 at night there was plenty of dew on that surface, so therefore it was going to be easier to bat. So I guess you weigh it up. You go runs in a final. You want to get them under, and create some scoreboard pressure, or you want to have the conditions in your favour. And I think it was probably more the fact that they put on a clinic in terms of how to bowl on a slow surface. From the very first over, they had a deep point. They didn't go with your traditional, fine leg, third man, and then wait for things to happen. They were ahead of the game in terms of how they operated. They started bowling cutters, bowling into wicket, from the second over. Taking the pace off. They were, trying to block off one side of the park. It was just a really smart performance. And then at the back end of the innings, they started, just basically taking off all the pace to a guy like Surya Kumar Yadav, and he just couldn't hit it off the block. I mean, that was such a critical part of the game where he could potentially have got another 30 or 40 and made the game tight.
Colin Rohit, as we expected, came out of the blocks, set the tone for India, and I think at one point you're thinking, OK, here we go again. They like the pace coming onto the bat. As Hess said, they took that off well, the Australians, later in the innings. But I think getting Shubman Gill and then Virat Kohli, they would have probably taken getting Kohli for 54 in a World Cup final. They started to make inroads, and then the belief started to come as well in what they were doing.
Yeah, Rohit Sharma, you mentioned, obviously came out and just did what Rohit Sharma does. He's been doing it all World Cup, and they were unfortunate to lose Shubman Gill early doors. But yeah, the way that Hess mentioned, Pat Cummins' first ball was a cutter. They just adapted to the conditions and put the pressure on India. I thought they did really well from the Aussie bowling from overs 10 to 20. I think they only got 32 or 33 runs there, so that really slowed them up, and that. Kohli and Rahul, that partnership was slow, but it got them a little bit of momentum to try and get back into the game. And Pat Cummins came on, boom, took the wicket off Kohli, and like you said, 54. Yeah, most teams would take that.
Here's Mitch Starc, 3 wickets, Josh Hazlewood, a couple, Pat Cummins, a couple of wickets. But let's talk about, I suppose, the other side of the bowling performance in that effort. 7 bowlers used. Adam Zampa, he's come back from injury. They persevered with him. Very tidy, 44 runs for his 10 overs and a wicket. But what I was impressed with, Hess, was Glenn Maxwell. 35 off his 6 overs, a wicket, and then you throw in Mitch Marsh and Travis Head. You've got 10 overs there for 44 runs from your extra bowlers. Made a difference to their effort.
Yeah, and you only got that because it was clever captaincy. Munner's alluded to it. It was the fact that he was chopping and changing. They were often one-over spells. He'd bowled 2 one-over spells. Mitch Marsh bowled 2 one-over spells. So he kind of just tried to integrate it into the innings when they felt there was a period where they could, only go for 2 or 3. And he married that up with an attacking bowler from the other end. So he never let the game drift. But it was just a really smart performance. And the ball started to reverse. I think that's a point we need to consider because it was so dry and abrasive. As soon as Hazelwood came back on and Stark came back on, the ball started to reverse, the game changed. So it wasn't like India could then accelerate through the back end. They built that innings, but as soon as it started to reverse, we knew they were in trouble because you get 1 wicket, trying to start against that was going to be incredibly difficult. So, yeah, as a complete bowling performance, really, and as you said, bowlers contributed, but those big seamers up front, Cummins and Miller, were incredibly impressive.
Colin, let's talk par because obviously they were on the back foot, they were behind the 8-ball India, and you're watching, you're starting to think, what's a defendable score here maybe? What would they have needed? 260, 270?
I was probably thinking 270, 275 at one stage. That's more runs than you think. So, when you got 240, a lot's got to go your way. You've got to hold into your catches. You've got to take some early wickets, which they did, but they just couldn't continue that. And they obviously got that partnership, the Aussies. So, yeah, I thought 275 was probably par, especially from where India were. If they were a couple wickets less, then, maybe getting up to that 300. I know the commentators were thinking 280 to 300, but, for me it was 275, and then, you put the pressure on the Aussies.
Yes, just quickly before we take a break, the Aussies sucked the life out of that stadium and they talked about that in the build-up, playing in front of a crowd like that, but also in sport being able to silence a crowd like that of 100,000 people. And once they started to do that regularly, I think that's probably where they got on the front foot.
Yeah, they did. I mean, you take 3 wickets in the first 11 overs and that sort of sucks the life out of the crowd. And you see they were just sitting back. And for about 15 to 20 overs of that partnership between, Virat and KL Rahul, it was very much a trickle. I think it was something like 15 overs without a boundary. So it really never brought the crowd into it. And then they came to life a little bit early on with the ball, but they never really showed the vibrancy and that energy that I'm sure the Indians are after. Even Virat was at slip, giving it this one the whole way through, trying to get him to help him out.
An amazing performance in the chase, particularly by Travis Head. We know he's had his injury worries, his issues, he's come back. To play a knock like that in a World Cup final when your team needs you to stand up, where does that rate for you?
Oh, those are things that dreams are made of. That's obviously thrown out a lot when you play World Cups, but that is honestly, he was obviously, when you got man of the match and he was having a chat there, there was another 2 Aussie players that had got World Cup hundreds in a final, and that was Adam Gilchrist and Ponting, and he was like, yeah, well, that's why I'm third on the list, because legends do that, and good players do. So, yeah, Travis Head had a phenomenal World Cup, obviously coming in with a broken thumb, missed out a few games, and then, his first World Cup game got that big 100 in Dharamshala, and then he's backed it up now, and, got on him.
Yes, I suppose when you looked at this final on paper, you would have expected a Warner factor. You would have expected maybe a Steve Smith factor to step up on a big stage like this. And obviously, Glenn Maxwell, who got a couple of runs, he kept his strike rate of 200. But Travis Head, he had a wonderful catch in that first innings. But the way he played in that 4th wicket partnership, 190-odd with Labuschagne, what was your how impressive was that for you?
Well, man of the match in the semi-final and then man of the match in the final. It's a pretty impressive inning effort, isn't it, in terms of the way that you respond to pressure. And you wouldn't get any more pressure than that. 3 for 40 odd, chasing 240, and the ball was doing a little bit at that stage too. The ball started swinging. I don't think the Indian bowlers quite got it right up front. They probably missed a trick in terms of how they operated early on. But Travis Head, once he got past the first 20 balls, and he hit the first one out of the middle, other than the first over, he was away. And you could just see that it took all the pressure off Labuschagne, so Labuschagne could just soak up the pressure, just look to noodle the ball around for one, knowing that Travis Head was going to continue to attack. And his shot selection was exceptional. He wasn't trying to hit balls that he's not particularly good at. He's waiting for length balls that he can pick up over wide long on. He wants a little bit of a length where he can either hit down the ground or through extra cover. And if he's lucky enough to get width, he'll cut. But other than that, that's pretty much him. He'll noodle it around and look uncomfortable, but he knows his game inside out. And, an innings under that amount of pressure is just absolutely exceptional.
Yeah, Colin, take us into the mind of a top order batsman in a situation like this, where you've got guys falling around you, you're in a pressure cooker environment, all these eyeballs on you, and you find yourself 47 for 3, and then it's right, okay, it's time to build a partnership, and you're chasing probably a less than or subpar total, but you've still got to get the runs.
Yeah, I think when you're chasing 240, it allows you to soak up a little bit of pressure. You have to do that because if you went bang, bang again and be 5 down after 15, then you're in serious trouble. So, yeah, I think he absorbed a lot of pressure. At one stage, I think he was 10 off about 21. And then, like he said, when he hit that one out of the middle, bang, and he was away after those 20 balls, that partnership with him and Marnus was outstanding. And the thing that I really enjoyed about Marnus is that he never got out of his bubble. He just didn't really care about his strike rate as long as he was there and Travis Head was doing his thing. They were going to get it over the line because India needed to bowl them out. There was still plenty of time left in the game. So Marnus and him, the way they ran between the wickets pretty well. I thought that partnership there, we talk about partnerships in cricket, whether it's bowling or batting, and that one there just killed India.
I sort of think of a Michael Bevan, what he used to do. Lower down the order, he'd come in and he'd play some shots, no frills, but as Marnus is sort of saying, like Marnus's innings was so valuable. He said he was very emotional after the game, wasn't in the one-day team in South Africa, but to play a hand like that, 58 off 110, and really just feed the strike to Travis. What are your thoughts on the way he performed?
Well, I think the game was set up for him. I mean, he's not a high-tempo player, but he's almost like a backstop. Smith is almost a backstop, and Marnus is as well, but the fact they've got, I guess, Maxwell afterwards, they've got Inglis who can, play some shots. So I guess and their top 3 are all pretty aggressive. So I guess they've kind of bookended their innings a little bit differently by putting both Smith and Labuschagne in there to say, look, you guys just control the innings. You can change your tempo if need be, but basically you just try and solidify things. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, the fact that he was 3 down early was perfect for Marnus. He could just come in and just soak up a lot of balls, try and rotate the strike. He was under no scoreboard pressure at all, and that's when he's at his best. Munro's alluded to it. He was just in his bubble the whole time. He never even looked like he was going to go out of it. So, in order for Travis Head to play that one, he needed some real stability at the other side, and that's obviously what Marnus brought.
Big part of India's performance at this World Cup, the unbeaten run up until this point, has been their bowling department. Were you surprised that, I guess, when they became under a little bit of pressure or a lot of pressure, just at some of the tactics that were employed, how they opened the bowling and what we saw through the innings? Yeah,
I think obviously, they got the number 1 ODI bowler in Siraj, and he didn't get the ball until probably the 14th over. So I thought that was pretty interesting. A little bit maybe panic from Rohit, just trying to give a guy that's in form with Mohammad Shami the ball early, but. He's a seam bowler. He's not massive swing bowler. He gets a little bit of shape here and there, but Mohammad Siraj is a new ball bowler, can swing the ball. And, I think I heard Ricky Ponting say something like Mohammad Shami's record as an opening bowler is like 28, which, don't get me wrong, that's still good. Mm-hmm. But, being a first change bowler, especially at this World Cup, I think he averages just under 10 or something. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, I think that was a bit different. And, when Siraj is not swinging the ball, it takes him out of the game. And, that was probably just one little area, and it's hindsight. Obviously you'd love that crystal ball as a captain, but that was probably one decision there that let them down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you're defending a below par score, you can look to be aggressive, but the good thing that India have done throughout this whole tournament is they've been incredibly disciplined with the new ball, and they've been really clear around what role you play. And Bumrah all of a sudden started to try and swing it both ways. He lost control. So he was sort of going at 10s at the start. They brought in Shami, who, as Munro's alluded to, is more of a seam bowler than a swing bowler. And bowling with a brand new ball, which you haven't done the whole tournament, in conditions where it's a little bit slippery, is a risk. And the other part of that is that Siraj, who's got to number 1 in the world, he swings the new ball. It means you can elongate your attack. Whereas with Shami coming in at first change. Whereas if you don't do that and you leave Siraj on the sideline, when he comes back in, he's completely ineffective. So you've not only probably negated a little bit of Shami's strength, which is his control, you've taken Siraj out of the game, and that's, I think, just a little bit of panic. It is a little bit of, short-term thinking in terms of we have to get wickets, whereas India have got wickets because they controlled the game and they actually had guys bowling at the right time. So I can understand he wants wickets, but I think he's just gone away from his plan, and to do it in a final was a strange move.
It's the beauty of this game, isn't it, Manas, that you can be in great form as a team, but you come against a side like Australia who put it all together. Let's talk about their campaign, their run. A couple of losses to start, but what a dream 12 months for Pat Cummins and the team. A World Test Championship, retain the Ashes in England, and now a World Cup in India. I know there's been a lot of great Australian sides over the years, but in terms of a moment in time for Australian cricket, this is exceptional.
Yeah, it is. Obviously having those two, the Test Championship like you alluded to, and also the World Cup now. A lot of these players are in the Test team. I think somebody said today there was 10 out of that 11 that is in the Test team. So, yeah, it's a phenomenal effort. I think, when all the Kiwis enjoyed seeing them at the bottom of the table after their first two games, but, credit to them. They, you never write the Aussies off, and, they came back strong and they played for each other. You could hear it when they were talking to each other after, to Nasser and Howie after the game, that they played for each other. They said it was the hardest 8 weeks, especially Mitch Marsh, what he's gone through, and I think the boys pulled through for him, obviously, and, hats off to them. When you got your backs against the wall, when you're looking at it and, being 0 from 2, to come out and win the rest of them, that's a great effort.
Yes, I think the last time we spoke, you said don't write off Australia. Did you feel that, despite the fact that they had a couple of hiccups at the start of the tournament, that they were building and that players coming back, there was this sort of genesis of a World Cup winning side that was coming together?
Oh, look, I still thought India were favourites today, but I thought Australia would definitely make the playoffs. And once they make the playoffs, they're incredibly dangerous. To be able to play your best cricket at the playoff stage of World Cup, Australia are absolute geniuses at it. There are many times, even in between World Cups, they're sort of in the wilderness a little bit, and then they turn up and they can beat anyone on their day. So I'd never underestimate them. But I think the fact they played pretty much the perfect game today, I didn't expect that. I thought India would be able to use those conditions to their advantage, but fair play to Australia. They were very, very good today. What
does it say, Manas, about the culture of Australian cricket? They've been a wee bit away from their best at times over the last 7 or 8 years since that 2015 World Cup. They've had their moments publicly as well with certain players and bits and pieces. But in terms of the ethos and how they go about their cricket and their culture, what does it say about the Australian side?
I think it says a lot about loyalty too. They've stuck with their core strength of their players. They haven't chopped and changed just because they haven't been getting the results they've wanted. The Aussies have such a rich history in World Cups. Like you said, they've won 6, so you can never write them off. But yeah, this team, besides probably Warner, they're probably all going to be there probably in the next one as well. So maybe Smith, maybe not. But yeah, these guys, they've still got a long time to play with each other and for each other and for their country. So yeah, the Aussies are, they'll enjoy this. Ahmedabad will get the full wrath of Australia celebrating tonight, but this won't be them just thinking, we've achieved this. They'll be wanting some more as well.
What can you say, Hess, about Andrew McDonald? I guess you would be the first to say that as a coach, you're probably only as good as the team you've got around you to work with. But what he's managed to achieve in a short period of time is astonishing.
Look, it is, and he's incredibly well liked by the group, which is not because he doesn't make tough decisions, just because he's well respected in terms of how he operates. And you can tell by the way they talk and they communicate with each other that they're a very tight team. And they're a team that, as alluded, they play for each other. They've been through tough times together, but they back each other. And that combination with Pat Cummins and Andrew McDonald has been exceptional. And, Pat Cummins deserves plenty of credit because he's been through some tough times. He's been asked some pretty tough questions. And being a pace bowler and being able to captain, many forms of the game is incredibly difficult. And just the way he speaks, he's very calm, very considered, and, he does certainly have a lot of respect for his players, and the players certainly have a huge amount of respect for him. So I think that combo is a really good one.
Just quickly, guys, before we go, thoughts on the World Cup overall? I know it wasn't the way New Zealand fans wanted it to turn out for the Black Caps, but I think generally speaking, guys, would you agree we saw some competitive cricket from all the sides, Afghanistan namely, so it was a pretty entertaining tournament. Yeah,
positive for me. Even the Dutch. It was great to see a couple of Kiwi guys in there on the world stage doing their thing, and hopefully they can go strength to strength. And I think positive for me. At the start of the tournament, obviously the crowds, people spoke about the crowds being real low, but towards the end, when it got into the swing of things, it was massive.
Yeah, look, I actually think New Zealand played well, to be honest. I think the fact that we made the semi-finals in foreign conditions can't be underestimated, and of course we want to win, like every team at that tournament, but I think you have to give some kudos to the Black Caps. I think they played some really good cricket over the last 8 weeks. The Dutch for me were a real highlight. Afghanistan have sort of always been creeping up, but for me the Dutch just showed that there's not a massive gap between number 10 and potentially number 12 or 13. So, hopefully the game's growing worldwide.
Absolutely fantastic tournament, and we do appreciate your input over the last few weeks. Mike Hesson down in Dunedin, thanks very much indeed as always. Colin Munro, thanks for your time. We'll see you again shortly. And that is us for no boundaries in the Cricket World Cup. It is Australia's their 6th title. They've beaten India in Ahmedabad. We'll see you soon on Sky Sport.